So thank you all for coming. Hopefully we'll get a few more people jump on as we're going along. I'm Elisa Holleran, and the reason I'm here is because I'm just a community member, a Third Ward resident, and I'm supporting Nick for Third Ward Alderman. I was really thrilled to see that he jumped into the race. I didn't know him before, but when I saw that he jumped into the race, I reached out to him and was really, really thrilled to hear what he stands for. And so here we are. I just want to go over the agenda and a couple of things that might be important. So first of all, my role is just going to be to keep things on track, to keep our agenda going. And I wanted to go over our agenda for today. So what we're going to do is I'll turn this over to Nick shortly after I just point out a few things about Zoom. And he will talk for a while, just give a little bit of an introduction about who he is and what is important to him and what he stands for. And I am wondering a little bit about this. This is kind of spontaneous, but our plan is to have people write questions in the chat. So if you have a question, please put that question in the chat and I will read that to Nick when we move into the question and answer period, which will be after Nick gives an introduction. And the way that you use the chat is on the bottom. You should be able to see an icon and a thing that says chat. You click on that and then the chat will appear in the lower right corner. And please correct me if I'm wrong about any of this. And the important thing is that it says on the bottom to, and you want to click and make sure that you're clicked on everyone so that everybody could see the question, and then type your question in that chat. We are going to ask that everybody stay muted during all of this until the end. I see the cat behind you. We were talking about maybe Nick using a cat filter, but we decided against it. Anyway, so hopefully you all know how to use the chat, and just feel free to put in questions at any point as Nick's talking or whenever. So as Nick mentioned, this is being Facebook Live. So we're on Facebook Live right now. And I think that pretty much covers it, unless I'm forgetting something. Am I forgetting anything, Nick? Oh, yes. And so we'll do a period of question and answer. And then after that, we'll invite you to open your mics and just have more of an opportunity just to chat without so much restriction.
Let me bring up our agenda real quick. And there we are. And if we're ready to get going, let's get going. So hey everybody, my name is Nick Korzeniowski. It's Nicholas Korzeniowski on the ballot, but either way, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm running for alderman in the Third Ward. I've been an Evanstonian I've been a Third Warder for better part of a decade, and Evanstonian for probably all of that decade, and been in the Third Ward, and really quickly realized that government in the Third Ward seems a little upside down from what it's supposed to be. It was very difficult for me to get any communication inroads into my own representation in government. It was very difficult for me to really learn what was going on in my town. And so I got very interested about what exactly was up with that. Why was that? And you may remember that I ran for school board 4 years ago. You may not, but I did. And during that time, I got to really start seeing the full picture, what I was missing as a resident of the Third Ward. And I realized that it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't work like this in other wards. This is something we're used to seeing, and so we abide it. But we can do better. And when I started thinking about running for this office, that was sort of the driving impetus that we deserve to be represented in our city government. And the third ward is uniquely suited to lead in our city government. And so why wouldn't we have, communicative, responsive representation? That was my driving force, and frankly, I'm not alone in that. There have been whole campaigns that have focused entirely on that. So I don't think I'm being all out on a limb to say that that's a common reason to be engaged in the third ward, but obviously we're going to go beyond that. There's a whole platform here. I'm going to try to cover the big points of it as quickly as we can, so that you have a, for lack of a better term, a crash course in the platform, and then we can open up Q&A. So let's get going. The first thing that I always talk about is affordability. I do refer to it as the affordability crisis. That's not terminology that I invented. That's something I do wholeheartedly believe we are in, though. And let's take the time to sort of flesh out top to bottom what I mean by the affordability crisis. The estimate in the city right now is that for the city, we need something like 8,500 affordable units to actually meet the demand of this crisis. So when you see city council talking about, oh, this, yeah, I mean, we have to put up these 100 luxury units because it comes with 10 affordable units. Where are we going to get 10 units? We need 8,500 units. Um, but it goes more than that. What is an affordable housing unit? What is that? That's got to be a term, right? Like there's a definition for that someplace, and there sure is. There's a whole ordinance in town for that, and it says that a building needs to have 10% of affordable units, which means I believe it's 60 to 100% of something called AMI, and that's just the it's the average income in the area. Now, if you break AMI down to the third ward specifically, um, you're looking ballpark $75,000, $85,000. So Daniel Biss, you may have heard that name before. A state senator makes, I believe, it's something like 66,000 on the black and white on the paper. So our affordability ordinance right now prices out state senators from the third ward, and we call that affordable. That's absurd. And beyond that, to say, oh, well, we've got 10 units at 60 to 100% AMI. So 100% is fine. Like, we're going to call it affordable even if it's at that top number. So I think that using AMI is about as helpful as, chaining payments to CPI for Social Security. It's not helpful. It does not attack the problem that we purport to attack. Um, and so I've talked about not affordable housing so much as affordable living, because even if you somehow are able to surmount these obstacles and overcome these hurdles and get one of these units, and by the way, we're talking about, and I believe that many, many, many incumbent city council folks would agree and have agreed explicitly that the goal of affordability is to bring up families or to keep up and coming families here in Evanston. That is the best way for everyone to thrive, is if new families can come up and thrive here, we all benefit. So picture yourself as one of these up and coming families. I like to think that I'm one of those. I got two kiddos right now. My 5-year-old is um, at Lincoln. His brother is going to be 3 here in 2 weeks. We're up and coming. And my car right now is on the street. This is such an aside, but please abide it because I do mean something by it. My car's on the street right now. I haven't driven it in several days, and I'm sure there's at least one ticket on it right now because there's been snow. I know there will be. Every year I am out several $100s just in parking tickets. Street cleaning. When the street cleaning schedule changes, how do you find out about that? When I was petitioning to run for this office, I actually saw a street, um, an ordinance vehicle ticketing for street cleaning days. And I was already being a weirdo with a clipboard during a pandemic going door to door, so I ran up to the person and said, hey, can you give me a second? What's the street cleaning schedule right now? They had no idea. They said, I don't know, refer to the sign on the street. You know, those multicolored, I can't read this with reading glasses on signs? I said, well, that's the only way you'll ever know. There's one other way. I'm accidentally on other older person's mailing lists and they let their constituents know. So why don't we? And beyond that, so you've got parking tickets that you're guaranteed to get dinged for left, right, and center. You've got street cleaning schedules that, Lord help you if you can abide it. But then there's a wheel tax that I found out about the wheel tax in Evanston when I thought I was playing by the rules and still kept getting ticketed. That's how I found out about it. So if you're an up and coming family, you can expect that you'll get hit by it a couple of times before you really know what to do. And if you're in the third ward and you're up and coming, you probably considered the lakefront in your decision to come to the third ward. And I'm pretty sure nobody mentioned a beach token to you when you made that consideration. Now, beach tokens are demonstrably discriminatory. They disproportionately affect people of color. And there's a whole argument to be made there. But the fact remains, we're talking about nickel and diming kind of small potatoes that all add up to quite a much larger financial burden than you likely signed up for when you were breaking your back just to get into that affordable housing unit. So affordability to me isn't about abiding by some legalese on a docket about what my rent ought to be. It's about thriving in my community with my family. And I think that's what it is for anybody that cares about coming up in Evanston. They're not focused on the AMI in their affordable luxury development. They're concerned about their kids. They're concerned about doing right by them and theirs. That it's not rocket science. And for some reason, we're in a situation here where we're more concerned about getting the development up and getting it to do the bare minimum in providing 10% so-called affordable units, and then we're done. And I just find that morally, repugnant. It's not what we bill it as. It doesn't address any of the issues we purport to address, and we then act as if we're doing good work, and it's disingenuous. And so, for the affordability crisis to actually be addressed, we need to look at it from the shoes of folks being impacted by it, and without talking your ears off until the cows come home about it. That's really the crux of my push for affordability. I think right now it's not a ridiculous thing to say that property taxes are going up. 2 times during the pandemic, property taxes have gone up. And I will add, by the way, that vote in the last budget to do that was a 5-4 vote. One vote would have made that decision go the other way. The incumbent alderman in the third ward voted for the property tax increase. Had she not, there would not have been one. 2 years of a pandemic with 2 property tax increases. It's ridiculous. But on top of that, we've seen, I believe it's 6 luxury developments go up in this last term that is now ending. So 6 luxury high rises or mid rises in 4 years. They need capacity. What did the population of Evanston look like? Well, it stayed about flat. How could that be when you added all of this density into the population? How did the population stay flat? More or less. Well, it's because you priced a bunch of people out of town and they had to move. That's how it stayed flat. You brought in a bunch of luxury owners and condo renters and you got rid of everybody else. That's not okay. And to say that that somehow addressed an affordability issue is disingenuous at best. So I know I already said I'm not going to talk your ear off about it more, let's stop there. That's affordability. That's really the heart of what I want to address in the coming term um, from the city council. But it's obviously not the only thing. Um, we have something in place right now in the city called CARP, which is the Climate Action Response Plan. I might have, it's close. That might be exactly it, but it's close. Um, and the goal there is carbon neutrality by 2050. Um, CARP's a very ambitious plan. I don't think anybody will ever tell you that it's the end all. And I've been very ardent in saying this is a first step. The reason that I bring it up specifically in the third ward is because we have a ton of lakefront here that is imminently threatened right now by the climate crisis. Lee Street Beach it looks like it's out of a sci-fi movie right now with the barricades that are up along the waterfront there. The Army Corps of Engineers has used the word catastrophic to define the situation on our shore. And I see that as an opportunity for the third ward to lead on climate. CARP is great. Let's do it with more ambition than we have set out to do. Let's try to do it 10 years early. Let's try to augment it and add to it and get ourselves ready to move forward into that next step that we know is coming anyway. Because climate is not something that we can keep pretending is, a back burner issue. It isn't. We're about to lose Lee Street Beach. This is a reality right now in our community. To that end, I've advocated for incentives for renovations on homes for HVAC. And I'm going to wonk out for a second here. I believe it's 44% of our emissions in the city come from older buildings. That means they need to be retrofitted with modern heating, air conditioning, electrical, all that stuff. Well, that's really expensive to do, but it needs to happen. And so I've been a proponent of finding monies to offer to homeowners. Just, hey, you want to retrofit your house with Space Pack to do your air conditioning? Let's help you do that, because that's going to help us. We have a shared goal. Things like that, I think, are well worth a conversation at the level of the city council. They are not something that you should be throwing at staff or a town hall or something. These are things that we can do to help people right now. And it's an aligned goal with CARP. And we have a ton of lakefront to concern ourselves with in the third ward. I think this is an issue that we should be leading on. And that's where I'll leave climate right now. And I think we might have opened with this that I'm totally fine sticking around after this is over to answer a couple questions here or there. So if you have more that you'd like to hear about, please do reach out. Anyway, beyond CARP, and I had mentioned the budget, and then I will stop because I'm getting that look. Budget is one of those things that I think is sort of an umbrella sort of option, right? Like it touches so many other topics. And so let's talk about budget in in all caps. I'm not talking about any individual particular topic other than budget because it covers so many other topics. The current budget that was passed towards the end of November is, I think, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic, super negative word to say about it. It was a really awful budget, not just because of the tax increase in it during a pandemic, and not just because that tax increase was in order to cover a $500,000 hole in the budget. And you will not hear me say this often, but Ann Rainey and I agreed fully that Northwestern University owes us over $600,000 on fire services that are unpaid. And we're trying to make up a $500,000 hole in our budget. And so what did we do? We raised taxes. Of course we did. Because why would we ask Northwestern to easily fix the problem? So a 5-4 vote to raise taxes, and then we passed that budget. And there's so much more in that budget. It leaves what's called an SRO in our schools. SROs are something, I work in public education. I'm a technology guy. I help run the tech department in school districts. Right now I work in Skokie. We had an SRO in our middle school. We still do, but we have a different one now. I've seen what that looks like to kids, and specifically kids of color. I have literally seen a student realize that if she intimates that she might have a mental health crisis, she won't have to take the test today. And in a way, she was right, but hand to God, that police officer put a knee in that kid's back, pinned her to the ground, and threw her in her paddy wagon. And we're going to call that public safety. We're going to call that doing right by our kids. It's in the budget. Why? And 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 I'm sorry, but we hear from every school district ever, and 65 is no exception, that, oh, our SROs are different. They're teachers. They're wonderful. I'm not disparaging an individual. I'm disparaging a practice. And it's right there in our budget, unaddressed. Um, the alternative response system, which is a step towards, offering, well, alternative emergency responses to police. You have an issue that a social worker might address. Well, sorry, you've got a cop with a gun instead. There's a system, alternative response, emergency. Anyway, it's an alternative response system. This budget only allocated $200,000 to it for the city. That is worse than lip service. And somehow, during all of these half measures and negligent behaviors, we still managed to raise property taxes. We got that. So you hear a lot that a budget is a moral document. I think this is a perfectly immoral document. And it doesn't just cover policing. It doesn't just cover our property taxes. It covers everything in our lives as Evanstonians. These things, this is what trickle down is when it's true, is that these kinds of decisions hit top to bottom. And I think it's an absolute aberration that we've seen immoral budgets, just full stop immoral budgets, 2 years in a row. And I'm paraphrasing an old commercial. Where's the beef? Like, how is nobody upset about this? And folks are, but it's important to me that we finally have a budget that reflects the values of Evanston and not. I don't mean to be, melodramatic, but the values of Northwestern. They could have prevented a tax increase, and they didn't. Um, I'm going to stop there. I've gone over time by, what's our agenda say here? I'm over time by 5 minutes. I'm not as bad as I usually am here. Um, I'm gonna give the floor back right now.
Okay, thank you so much, Nick. That was really informative. And I just want to encourage people, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. Um, and I found myself a bunch of questions coming to my mind. Until we get others, I think I'll start with one of my own, if that's okay. So I've heard a lot of people talk about the downtown area, the parking fees, and how that's, prohibitive and makes people not want to use the downtown. And also, I'm just wondering about how the downtown is going to come back to vitality after the pandemic. It's so sad and depressing to go down there now and to see how bleak and dead it looks. And, I'm really hoping this pandemic will kind of give us new ways to vitalize the city and particularly the downtown area, and wonder if you have any thoughts about that, Nick.
Yeah, and just really quickly to pick up on what you said at the end there, if I was a more articulate and elegant speaker, I would have this buttoned up in a nice slogan. But I've said constantly in my adult life that the worst thing about a tragedy is not seeing the opportunity that it affords, because then the tragedy is double, because you did not build back better, as someone you might have heard of likes to say sometimes. Um, so yes, I think the genuinely tragic loss of so much of the vibrancy that makes Evanston unique um, does afford us the opportunity to redouble our efforts towards that that wonderful uniqueness of Evanston. It's going to be hard. It's going to be expensive, but I don't think anybody in town would say that it's not worth doing. Um, Parking fees is I used to call them Wally fees. That might not be a terribly politic thing to say, but during our previous city manager's term, increasing parking fees seemed to be the go-to to fix budget problems. And it goes back to what I was saying about affordability. It's a nickel and diming process to cover up the fact that people who ostensibly claim to be fiscally responsible are blowing holes in our budget and asking those least capable to help to make up the difference. And hey, look, now our downtown got hit by a natural calamity, and nobody wants to even try to go back because of how expensive it is. Like, how did that help? Because we just raised taxes twice anyway. Like, we didn't fix our budget like that. We just made it worse. We made everything worse by doing that. And I don't think it was hard to foresee either, by the way. Um, I've been an advocate that as density increases, because it will, that's not a moral or evaluative judgment on density, it will increase. Okay, street parkings right now, I would consider it a huge issue. I mean, I'm on the 7 block of Hinman. I usually have to spend 15, 20 to find parking when I get home from work. And, I'm young enough that in snow and ice and all of that, I can probably trudge a few blocks home if I need to, but there's no there's no lot one building here yet to displace a bunch of people's parking situation. And I'm already struggling. And I'm not the only one. So we need to be putting up garages. Maybe one or two. I know it's not terribly popular, but what's the answer? And if garages aren't the answer, let's have the conversation. Let's hear what the answer is. But we need some way to actually not be penalizing folks for living in Evanston, for shopping in Evanston, for visiting Evanston. Because coming here in any capacity costs money. And that is just inherently counterproductive to everything we want to see happen. Um, so to me, that's the low hanging fruit, is tackling just the literally the price of entry to come into Evanston. Um, that's step one. Step two, and I've been somewhat vocal about this as much as I could have been able to be up to this point, um, because the third ward has, the wonderful main Dempster Mile runs right here, and you've got a lot of small businesses that are hurting just like downtown. And I've been an advocate for, municipal broadband is a part of my platform. I've said very clearly, hey, if you're trying to either stay in your storefront or bring a new one in, and you don't have to worry about any telecom costs or overhead, that's tangible. That helps. Now, it also helps students in remote learning. It helps folks who are mad at Comcast for having their bills skyrocket every year. It helps everybody, but hey, it helps small business too. And it helps fix this issue, even if just a little bit. I've also advocated for stipending for small businesses, because the federal government has been so lackadaisical in helping out municipalities. And that's starting to change for the better. But is it too little too late? I'd hate to find out after the fact. And so I've advocated finding some way to either do it through a tax credit or whatever it might be, to just put liquidity into these businesses in a way that they can either keep payroll running when they otherwise couldn't, or they don't have to, any furloughs or anything like that. Like, is there any way we can stipend these small businesses just to keep their heads above water while we wait on the recovery package to pass Congress, that sort of thing? So, to me, it's sort of an all hands on deck. We have to address it in every way we can. I think that's 3 good ways to start, and I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And also, we're getting a bunch of really great questions. So now I'm going to get to sort through these. And I'm just going to say a couple of them. The first one of them that I'd really love to hear you address is, what do you see as areas of systemic racism in Evanston government? And then also there's a question about how do you compel Northwestern to contribute funds and resources to the city? Those are just a couple. So maybe, but there's several others that are great, so that are great questions as well. So maybe you could start with those and keep some time for some of the others as well.
Sure. Let's start with systemic racism, because that's one of those topics where we could do 10 of these meet and greets, and I wouldn't be done. So please hold me to a good time on this. Um, Systemic racism is something that Evanston has finally begun to acknowledge is a very real struggle, and uniquely in Evanston as well. It's not just, hey, systemic racism is bad, it's that Evanston has a history of this. And it's not absent from any walk of our lives. If you don't see it, you don't see it. That doesn't mean it isn't there. And our you know what, our city budget was a great way to start with this conversation. There's absolutely nothing in that budget that addresses systemic racism at all. And if you're not going to fund that fight, you don't believe in that fight. So, we folks would say about the 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 screed that we've been hearing in the recent years at the national level. Folks would say, hey, if you're going to support that person, you might not be a racist, but you're okay with racism. And to me, that's where we're at. The moment you pass a value item like a budget and it just reifies the damages, that's a racist budget. And I'm sorry that some folks might find calling a spade inflammatory or not unpolitic or whatever it might be, but frankly, you should feel uncomfortable to confront that. And that's the reality that we're living in right now. Um, Budgets are moral documents. If you're not going to address it in the budget, you're not going to be trusted to address it anywhere. Um, just yesterday, we made a statement further rebuking Eighth Ward Alderman Ann Rainey for her abject racism towards the sitting city clerk. And I'm sure there will be blowback. I'm waiting for it. It will come. And I don't think it's bragging to say, hey, if you're running for public office in some capacity, you're running to be a community leader, and that means sometimes you're going to have to lead, and that does not mean half apologies that you retract later. That does not mean saying, I have it here, hold on. That does not mean saying whether or not Alderman Rainey intended racial malice, like you're some kind of lawyer trying to add qualifiers so that it can mean whatever you'd like it to someday. There's a difference between not being racist and being anti-racist, and looking the other way and saying, oh, I don't know your heart, I don't know your mind, so who's to say that? That's not acceptable anymore. It's 2021. It's not acceptable. Officer Goodman of the now Congressional Gold Medal award-winning Officer Goodman, and his colleagues mentioned that horrible day that they were called the N-word dozens of times by the very people screaming Blue Lives Matter as they beat them with American flags. This isn't isolated to the Capitol insurrection. This sentiment exists in our country. And if you think you're shielded from it in our bubble, you're not. If you do not call it out, if you do not take active stands against it, it will get worse, it will recur, and it will hurt worse each and every time. So if you want to talk about systemic racism in the city council, well, there's one person who has been there so long that they are a racist institution unto themselves systemically, because they've been there for 3 decades plus. Alderman Rainey says that she's been, 34 plus years, and oh, this is so awful. I've been alive 36 plus years. You know better. To make it plain, you know better. And I would say that on February 23rd, the easiest way to take our first step in attacking systemic racism is to vote out racists in our city council. It's not just a budget issue, it's a personnel issue. And who's actually getting kicked out? Who's been censured in our city council? Alderman Rainey got to vote against her own censure. I think she should be censured for that. That's ridiculous. Devon Reed got censured for taking his laptop home so that he could keep working. And we can't have a stance against abject racism in our elected officials in the pro temp that ought to be a leader on these issues? Claims to be. Says reparations is something that, that's a feather in her cap. Do better if you're going to be that. We deserve that from you. Do better. Or get out of the way. There was this young guy, probably in Alderman Rainey's, coming up years, there was this young guy named Bob Dylan who wrote a song about the times changing and getting out of the way if you're not going to lend a hand. Do it. You believed it then, I'm sure. Do it. And I'm sorry that I'm getting heated about this, but it genuinely offends me in a very deep level when I see this, and when I see it in our government, and when I see it exacerbated every time you take a look. You want to talk, I'm talking about a personnel issue. Who actually gets removed from their station in city government or in city service or in public service? Who got removed? It was Kevin Brown. It wasn't Alderman Rainey. How does that happen in a community where we say that we're progressive and we're anti-racist? How do we live this truth in our government? How do we square that circle? How do we have both of those two things coexist? And I think we have a brilliant opportunity here. Like I was saying, it's a tragedy. It's only doubly so if we don't make something good of it. And we have, in one election, we have the ability right now to have a full clean slate for a bright progressive future in Evanston. Anti-racism and tackling systemic racism is a paramount issue for that coming term and for that coming council and that coming dais. And I very much hope that I earn your support and your trust in addressing that issue for the third ward. I'm probably way over time. I'll stop right there.
Okay. Great answer, though. Thank you, Nick. And just to speak to the time, we plan to end by noon, but also leave a little time after that if we go over for us to unmute our mics and talk to Nick. But in the meantime, how do you plan to compel Northwestern to contribute funds and resources to the city and reparations program, et cetera?
So Northwestern asks a lot of the city on a pretty constant basis, be it exceptions in giving land or space in buildings or housing or anything like that. There's obviously a give and take in any sort of neighborly relationship. The city is usually just sort of, and not knee-jerk, that's the wrong word for it, and that's what I'm stuck on here for a second, but the city seems to not really have a no in their pocket when Northwestern comes knocking for a favor. Northwestern doesn't seem to have a yes in their pocket when we come asking. So I think it starts with not making it a one-way street anymore. Northwestern wants something, start with no. You wanted something? I want your fire services paid for. You paid for half of them, pay for the other half. What's special about that half? Why did everyone in town have to make up for that? Your answer is no until you pay your bill. That's compelling. If you're a university and you're making a dollars and cents argument to do anything, and the answer is going to be no unless you play ball like a good neighbor, you have no choice. Northwestern isn't what makes Evanston great. Evanston makes Northwestern great, or helps make Northwestern great. I'm not trying to say that the university isn't amazing. It is, but there's a co-relationship here. There's a coexistence, and how we ever got to a point where this university can just steamroll the city and the city council writ large. I don't know how we got to it, but part of a new slate. And I will mention this is not exclusive to Northwestern. Developers are doing this too. And I'm sure I'm not the only candidate getting unsolicited emails from financial interested parties. Hey, what's your stance on this development that we're pushing through? Hey, just curious, what do you think about this building? These are developers asking what they can and can't get away with a new progressive slate of city council. These are people seeing the writing on the wall and seeing that the city's not going to take this anymore and wondering how they can cash out. Northwestern's not different. They see this in numbers, in money, in dollars. So before I say something that I don't, necessarily, fully commit to or something like that, it's a dollars and cents game essentially. You can tell Northwestern no as default. They have to say yes. I hate to be so heads I win, tails you lose, brutish in that negotiation, but frankly, it's been going that way in the other direction for some time now. Put the shoe on the other foot, you'll see it change right away.
Great, thank you. Nick, how about maybe we make this the last question? What do you think? And then move on to opening up mics or a couple more questions? What do you
Yeah,
think?
sure. I'm such a motor mouth that one more question could take us into, dinner. So why
Okay,
don't we?
well, let's see how it goes. So in what ways do you see yourself being available or visible to constituents in this ward?
So one of the first things that I mentioned to folks about this is because I run the tech department or help run the tech department in the Skokie School District, which is it's a feeder school for Niles North and Niles West, for anybody wondering. Remote learning kind of needs me specifically to work, which means school needs me to work. The only reason I'm saying that is because in a pandemic, it's not on my wrist right now, but I have to carry one of these guys around so that I can always be on call like I work in a hospital. Because that's the reality of the world we live in right now. And that right there, to me, that bakes right into the pie more, like a world more responsiveness than what we have right now in the third ward. Beyond that, I'm a tech guy. I get more notifications than I want constantly. If you contact me, I will see it, and I will see it fast. And because I get that volume so much, I don't have a choice but to respond quickly, or I'm gonna get the old Looney Tunes inbox outbox thing. It's gonna get completely one-sided if I'm not immediately responsive to you. So it's incumbent on me, just from selfish considerations about my day-to-day, to be as responsive to you as possible. But beyond that, I value it morally. Even if it wasn't my job, I would be trying to do that. So not only do I not have a choice, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Responsiveness is it's just part of who I am. It's part of what you get from me. And I think you can even look on our Facebook page. Like, I will be in a meeting at work and trying to sneak away hey, give me a second, I'll get right back to you. Like, I'm here, I'm around, and I'm running for public office and public service, and I mean this genuinely when I tell you that means my time is yours right now. I've said that to people in emails back already. Simple question, hey, what do you think about blank? And I'll end with, my time is yours. If you want to sit down with me on Zoom, some people on the Zoom know that I'm willing to do that. Like, I will sit down one-on-one with you and just sit down and chat about whatever you want to hear. My time is yours, and I mean that. Sincerely mean that. So, not to mention, lastly, if that wasn't enough compelling to you that, hey, I really mean what I'm saying, um, I think that Alderman Nguyen had a great idea when she started doing town halls. Um, for some reason, she calls them quarterly, even though she held three of them in 2020 when Zoom is a thing during a pandemic and it's easier to hold them, not harder. But she calls them quarterly again now, but she did drop that word without a word about it and canceled her spring meeting without even saying she canceled it. She just didn't hold it. Those aren't terribly helpful, but the idea behind a town hall is, and that is to her credit. And I'm not trying to disparage Melissa Nguyen. I'm trying to contrast the way in which I will serve and the way in which she has served. It is her record. It is not to disparage her as a person. I want to be very clear about that. I have had nothing but cordial conversation with that person before in my life. That being said, I can't tell you how many times I've met her for the first time. Responsiveness is not something that you get from Alderman Nguyen. You just don't. And I understand why she doesn't want to own that, but it's the truth, and it is. And I don't think I have to bring receipts to prove that. I think if you've been active and aware of Alderman Nguyen during her 6 terms, you know that to be true. And even holding the Zoom right now and answering this question, I hope, is a step in the other direction. Town halls are a great idea. I've actually committed to, with Evanston Fight for Black Lives, they specifically asked, are you going to be holding town halls? If so, when? How frequently? How are we going to get in touch with you? And I said, you know what? At the very least, we're hinted at possibly getting them quarterly right now, even if we don't. How about, let's just start with a baseline at double that, every other month at minimum. And I don't mind doing it more than that, but let's start at double that. So what I'm trying to put together here is a continuum of different layers of responsiveness that collectively amount to a tremendously engaged and responsive representative to your city government. That's not something that you ought to be without. It's not, me saying, hey, look at this great thing I can provide that nobody else can. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm more responsive than the average person. I know I'm more responsive than Alderman Nguyen, though. And if you feel that you deserve better representation, that's literally the first step to any actual gains in that direction. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully that answers the question.
So Nick, I think it would be great to open up the floor to people. I did want to ask you though, after everything that you're saying, and you're getting me more excited, even though I already was excited, but how can people help if they feel like you're a great candidate to support?
Sure. So you can always see us on Facebook. We have a phenomenal young volunteer helping us out with our Instagram right now. I am as a tech guy, but closer to 40 than I am 30. Instagram is an absolutely opaque thing to me, and we have wonderful volunteers helping us actually show good presence there. So you can reach out in any social media way you'd like, but also if you'd like to get us on our webpage, it's Nick, N-I-C-K, 4, F-O-R, and the number 3. Not being cute with anything there. It's just Nick for 3. We use Nation Builder as our platform, which, if you're familiar with it, it's a very common platform. But we're a true grassroots campaign in the sense that Obama was when he ran in 08. Like, most of our donations are very small dollar from what other folks have been asking for in their fundraising. We say $5 or $500. It all helps, and it really truly all does. I know that is a far lower floor and a far lower ceiling than what most folks ask for. Point being, when we spend money, it's because we genuinely think that thing out of every other thing is deserving of what little money we've got. So buying a nickfor3.com instead of Nick for 3 at Nation Builder, like, not worth the dollars and cents. Long story short, nick43.nationbuilder, one word, .com. That's the website. nick43.nationbuilder.com. If you want to do /contact, you can sign up, you can get engaged, you can volunteer to help out, you can ask a question. If you do /donate, that's how you get to our donate page. And like I was saying, we genuinely appreciate $5. We genuinely appreciate $500. All of it helps. All of it really truly helps. And I do try to get back to folks especially if I don't know this person already and they're donating money, and tell you, hey, this $300 donation that you just made actually paid for phone banking software. You're the reason that we're able to place a phone call now. I want you to genuinely know that you're not just donating to some big machine. You are actively helping advance a progressive future in the third ward if you donate any amount of money. And so I know I'm supposed to say this, but I really do mean this heartfelt. Thank you to those who have donated. Thank you so much. And to those that haven't, come on, get in here. nick43.nationbuilder.com/donate. With the primary season that we're not in, it makes a lot of sense. Hey, I'm going to throw my money towards races that are about to hit the ballot in a couple of weeks. I get it. But on February 24th, we're 5 weeks to early voting. So we're really getting into go time right now. So if you can give anything, I implore you to. We fully expect to see a truckload of money coming from the other side. I'm not even saying we're going to beat them. I just want to be able to survive whatever they're about to do. And so please, if you just want to sign up and shoot an email off to me and ask me more about some topic, happy to do it. But if you really do believe in what we're up to here, a donation goes farther than words can say.
Okay, great. I'm wondering if there would be any value, Nick, to having people put their email addresses in the chat if they want to be contacted, or is it better to just go on the website and sign up?
When you go to nick43.nationbuilder.com/contact and you sign up, there are actually checkboxes where you can say like, hey, I don't really want to get texted or emailed, or hey, I'm interested, but not like that. I just want you to know I'm around, or hey, I just wanted you to have my email. Takes all kinds, and there are little check boxes so you can sort of flavor your commitment exactly how you'd like right up front. So if you just want to get your email out to us, that's a really great way to do it. Obviously, if you want to reach out to anybody that's volunteering, like we don't live in a vacuum. You can get your email to us any way you like, but the systematic way to do it is nick43.nationbuilder.com/contact. Which I believe just dropped into chat as well. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
you, Brian, for that. Okay, so we talked about simulating like a real live meet and greet that could happen in a non-pandemic time. So, we'd like to give everybody the opportunity just to unmute your mics, say hello, just have the opportunity to have Nick get to know you, as well as, you've had the opportunity to get to know him. I know that he'd like to get to know you a little bit. So even if you just unmute and say your name and where you live or whatever it is or ask a question or whatever is feels right for you.
Hi, I'm Liam. I was wondering, you might not know, I mean, you can't read minds, so you don't know their intentions when they say this, but all the mayoral candidates I've seen say things like that the city council members already have their minds made up before they make a decision. They'll hear like public comment and then they'll make it anyway. And I didn't fully understand what that meant or how one deals with that, because it's easy to say, well, because it's weird, the mayoral candidates are saying like, people already have their mind made up before they hear public comment. Is that like an issue of listening to people, or is that just like about their other interests that they're getting that makes them want to make certain decisions? Or I just wonder if you had any insight on what that means.
Yeah, sure. So it's sort of worse than any of that, but it's better than any of that at the same time. It's actually an issue of process more than anything. The agenda packets are delivered well in advance of those council meetings, and they're large, they're hefty. So if you've done your job as a member of the city council, you've already poured over that topic and that document and that data, and you've already decided how you would like to vote on that because the vote is, oh, gee, in an hour. But before you do that, okay, 45 seconds, go, random public comment person, and then there's a, I don't know if it's a formal ordinance or if it's an unspoken rule, but the understanding is you're not supposed to engage with that person either. You thank them for their time and you move on. Well, okay, cool. That person doesn't know any of that. So they think that
Right,
they're,
I didn't know any of that.
yeah. So you show up to public comment to speak your mind, and it literally doesn't mean anything. And it's not because somebody's being a jerk. It's because you're too late. And the reason I say it's also a great thing is because that's exactly the kind of thing that could change overnight if the city council wanted it to. There's nothing in the way of that happening other than the city council saying, them's the rules, sorry. So I think several of the mayoral candidates are actually speaking to a positive change they'd like to see where public comment matters. And right now, it structurally does not. It's not because you're speaking to a dais of jerks. It's because you structurally cannot be heard in that public comment in the way you feel like you deserve. And you rightly do feel that way, by the way.
Well, Nick, is that written into the procedural code that the city operates on, like how the meetings have to be run legally?
I don't believe it's legal, or I'm not saying it's illegal. I don't believe that it's written down as a hard and fast rule or city ordinance or something like that. I believe it's in the same sort of code of conduct that Alderman Rainey violates every time she speaks, where it's rules that people don't really abide by if they don't choose to.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm saying you don't have to choose to disavow public comment.
Okay.
Just because the mayor is going to shut you down if you do, doesn't mean you can't.
So in your view, if someone posed a public comment that you wished to respond to, you just could as an alderperson, and maybe maybe that would change the norm.
My understanding is that you can say whatever you want on that dais, and as long as you're the longest serving member, you can just say I was being snarky, and then it's okay at the end. So yeah, you can say whatever you'd like. People can try to shut you down on the dais, and I would be more inclined to respond in the way that Alderman Sufferton does.
Got it. Can I ask another question about affordability? We were talking about this recently, and I put this in the question, so I don't know if you saw it, but I wonder if affordable condos is a thing that's ever even been talked about or considered. Like, is there some way where you could create housing that's, not as transient, but that's affordable, so that people are genuinely part of the community and feel welcome and able to live there. But again, yeah, it's not as come and go or transient. I don't know, is that a thing?
So this is one of those things where I'm going to actually give a lot of credit to Alderman Nguyen, because she does talk in the discussions about Lot 1 about wanting 3-bedroom units in there for the affordable units. And honestly, it would be weird to talk about how we want families coming up and thriving, but there aren't affordable condos. Like, how do they do that then? So it's sadly lacking in the city, but it doesn't have to be. And to that end, Lot 1 is actually a really great way for the Third Ward to lead in that regard. There's been a lot of talk of getting exactly the project that the community wants on that lot because it might be land that we then donate to the developer. I'm not sure how that idea came about, but it's on the table right now. Well, that means we could stipulate whatever the heck we want, and the developer is going to have to play ball. We hear a lot from our city council right now, and I couldn't imagine why. We hear a lot about, well, these are the developers that came to us, you can't just, as if like we're scraping the barrel or something to get development in Evanston. They'll come, and they'll come on your terms. You just have to demand your terms, set your boundaries. Like, we're not, this isn't like some abusive relationship between us and developers.
Right.
So if we say, hey, we want every affordable unit in that project to be 3-bedroom, take it or leave it. There's nothing in the way of that other than a developer leaving it. I don't know why the city council is afraid to do that right now. But again, to Alderman Wynn's credit, and I want to be very clear, credit where credit's due. She has been a good advocate for that in the Lot 1 project. She really, really has. And she's absolutely right about it. Hats off to her for it.
I'd like to encourage others to speak, but I just had a reaction to what you just said about Alderwoman Wynn. In the current climate in this country, with the way that people speak to one another and the divisiveness and the ugliness of the way that people speak to one another, I just have to say that I appreciate the way that you speak to differences but are not demeaning of Alderwoman Wynn, and just would like to see that so much more in our political discourse in general. So I appreciate that, Nick. And would love to hear from others as well. If anybody wants to introduce themselves or ask a quick question, we could maybe take 10 more minutes here.
Hi, Nick.
Several of you.
Yeah, sitting next to them, my parents.
I think that somebody's speaking, but we can't. I think 2 people are speaking. Oops.
Need any help campaigning?
I need all the help in the world campaigning. Anyone who can help with anything takes all kinds. If you want to, you can reach out to Sarah if you'd like, but anybody that wants to help out, we absolutely could use it. We need help with phone banking soon. We need help getting the word out generally on social media. We need visibility. We need help with fundraising. We need help Instagram. We need help across the board. We are running a truly grassroots and truly progressive campaign against a 6-term incumbent. This is not ever going to be anything other than a tremendously arduous race on our end. We have every disadvantage and very few advantages here. So I believe that it's a just cause. I believe that it's well worth our righteous good work. But that means volunteers of all walks of life are what we need most. We need it more than funds. We need it more than votes. We need volunteers. So anything anyone can provide, more than happy.
Can I just comment on that? I also noticed that Keenan, is that your name, or because we can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else can hear her, but I can't.
Oh,
Okay. Oops. No, can't.
I see. Oh, I see. Muted. It looks like. Can you?
How's this?
There you go.
Okay, that's fantastic. And then after you speak, I just want to make a comment about helping.
Sure.
But please go ahead, Keenan. Is it Keenan or?
No, it's Carol. My husband is Kenan, so.
Oh, okay, Carol. Nice to meet you, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a very basic question. What is the voting protocol? In other words, is it all in person? I'm guessing it is. Is there early voting?
So there is early vote. You can actually, for the primaries, you can early vote today. That opened on the 8th of February. It's a 2 week window before so election day is always a Tuesday. Rewind it to the Monday of that week, and 2 weeks prior to that is when early vote begins. That's at the Civic Center. You can show up in person. There's usually not a line. Everybody's socially distanced and all that good stuff. But you can also mail vote. You can mail vote in the primary if you want to. And I have links to provide you for exactly that. I'll put them in the chat right now. Here is the mail ballot application from the Cook County Clerk. That is in chat there. And here is the apply online from the city of Evanston itself. And I believe you can receive that if you know anybody who is not an English speaker and is interested in a mail-in ballot. I believe you can get them in Spanish, in Hindi, in Korean, in Chinese, and I believe Tagalog. So there are options there for mail-in voting.
Thank you.
The one
Thank
thing I
you.
will say is if you are doing a mail ballot, please be considerate of the time it takes for our artificially slowed down mail system to do the delivery process of that ballot. Folks, the last thing you'd want to do is be stuck in a situation where you're voting, but your envelope never arrives and is never counted, So those options exist, but if you're gonna capitalize on them, I stress that you do it quickly when those windows open, and you're in that window right now for the primary.
Thank you. I'm very glad that I tuned in today. I'm glad to meet you. You had me with Lee Street Beach,
Yeah. Great.
and it went up from there.
Great.
Thrilled.
So I just wanted to say something in response to Sam and asking how to help. I mean, one thing that I know you didn't ask me the question, but I'm answering it anyway. I have found Nick to be really open and responsive. So like, I just had this idea to do a great meet and greet and said, hey, why don't we do this? And he's like, hey, yeah, I'm sure there's organized ways that he wants to get people involved, but also if you have ideas, I think he'd be totally open to them. And in my mind, it's all about grassroots. So it's all about reaching out to people and really being creative about how you do that. So I hope Sam, as a younger person, that you think about how you might organize people that or reach out to people that Also, we had kind of talked about doing more of these meet and greets. This was our first kind of guinea pig one, so but it seems like it's a great way to get to know Nick and to have Nick get to know you all. So hopefully we'll be doing more of those, and if you want to organize one of those, that's certainly an option as well. Hope I'm not putting my 2 cents in where it doesn't belong, Nick. I have a problem with that.
I've not seen it in my life, but I agree with every word you just said. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah. So we just have a few minutes left. Anybody else want to introduce themselves or say hi or ask a quick question?
Well, I have one more question going off of that. I'm a filmmaker, Nick, and if it would be helpful, I'd love to have an interview with you and get some footage to show people of the Third Ward in order to and hopefully people will come to more meet and greets, but as a way of introducing you to everyone around here and showing them who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I am direct messaging you in the Zoom chat my personal email right now. And if you would like to drop me a line there, I would be thrilled for the opportunity. We've been toying around exactly that idea, but the alpha and omega of the film prowess that we have right now is like, does your ring light have a mount for your iPhone in the middle of it or not? So If you can help out, absolutely. That is exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about. That is a unique talent of yours that we are sorely lacking in, and would love to add you to that, to the bigger picture.
Great, I'll send you an email.
All right.
That's awesome. It's exciting. Anyone else before we call it a day or a whatever it is?
Real quick follow up. What is lot one? I meant to ask that earlier, but I don't.
Sorry about that. Lot one. So, on Chicago and Hinman, there's the courts on the one side, and then there's Dan's law building on the other, and there's a parking lot, immediately east of that. That's lot one.
Okay.
It's called lot one because, like, as you move north, the city owned lots, the number increments, but it's the first thing after the cemetery, so it's lot one.
All right, thanks.
Nick, one other thing about the voting, I was kind of ignorant about the primary and the regular election, and
Yeah.
so my understanding is that you will only be in the regular election. There is not a primary race for
Correct.
alderman. Okay.
The only when you go to vote, in the consolidated general election on April 6th, the third ward will have, Melissa Wynn. It will have Nicholas Korzeniowski. Those are the only two names on that ballot. That is the April 6th election. A primary only triggers when there are just so many candidates that it doesn't make sense to throw them all into the general. That's why you see a primary for. The rules are different with mayor, because for anybody that was there 4 years ago, there was a really big to-do about the mayoral 4 years back. So there are special rules for mayor. That's how they got their primary. But generally speaking, it's like if you hit a certain number of candidates, then there's a primary. Well, the third ward only has the incumbent and the challenger on the ballot, so there's no primary there. So we're on the ballot April 6th. Early vote will open 2 weeks prior to April 5th.
Great. Okay, well, just keeping to our time limit, I would like to thank everybody who came and participated. I'm really, it's just great to keep getting to know you better, Nick, and I'm really excited to continue to work for you, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Oh wow, we're right at the 12:15 that we were hoping for too.
Hey.